Something smart to chew on. The Lunchroom on RCI, Monday to Friday, 12:45 to 2 p.m. The Lunchroom. Informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI. Food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. It is Thursday, March 21st, 2024. It is program number 1149 of the Lunchroom, and I am your host, Calix George Jr. Now, in addition to 101.1 FM radio, don't forget you have us online on our website. It is rcistlucia.com. We're streaming there live as well. We have our other shows in podcast form for download. And as well, we are streaming on Facebook. Just search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International. And be sure to like and share that link, please, with your friends and family. If you want to call in to make a contribution, the number to do so is 452-3046. We would definitely like to hear what's on your plate today. And don't forget, you also have the option of messaging in. In addition to that number, 452-3046, you can also use our WhatsApp platform to message in your comments. You can also call in to that number. It is 724-0008. So save it in your phone. RCI WhatsApp. It is 724-0008. Some birthdays being celebrated today. We're sending some birthday greetings out to Miss Karen Clozel. Happy birthday to you, and wishing you an absolutely fantastic birthday celebration. And also sending some birthday greetings to my niece, Miss Svetlana Johnson. Happy birthday to you, Sveti, and we do hope that you're having a fantastic birthday. It is also the birthday of Ronaldinho for football fans out there, especially Brazil fans, and he is in fact 44 today, so happy birthday to him. Now, a bit of history for the day. In the year 1349, the Black Death Massacre in fact, saw between 100 and 3,000 Jews killed in what were known as the Black Death riots in Erfurt in Germany. It was a part of a wave of pogroms across Western Europe. In 1804, on this day, the Napoleonic Code was adopted in France and stressed clearly written and accessible law. 1871 saw the journalist Henry Morton Stanley beginning his famous expedition to Africa. 1975 in Ethiopia saw the abolishing of the monarchy there after 3,000 years. 2013 on this day, the European Space Agency revealed new data that indicated that the universe was 13.82 or is 13.82 billion years old. And in 2014, on this day, Russia formally annexed Crimea amid international condemnation. We now move on to our dish of the day.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. This all kind of tiles. Come down to Tiles Plus. We also got glassware and vanity. Box, doors, you'll see. Come down, don't mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Lance Road in Castries. Bosses, you Grozile. And Slack Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And in just a bit, we're going to be having a chat about an ongoing conference that's happening right here in St. Lucia. And that is, in fact, involving the heads and representatives of various tertiary education institutions all across the Caribbean. So we have some guests who are coming in to discuss that in just a bit. But before we actually get into that, one aspect that's pretty much interesting in the news, and very unfortunate situation, which occurred over in the Ministry of Infrastructure, and it in fact involved the a certain irate customer getting violent to the point of actually damaging the customer service area and forcing it to in fact be closed today. So I mean, we've heard of road rage. This is I suppose customer rage, but certainly not anything that should be encouraged. And so we very, very much want to put our voice in condemning those types of actions at this time. So, as I mentioned, there was in fact, or there is in fact ongoing, and another day to go, I believe, an actual a conference being held here in St. Lucia, and it involves tertiary education institutes for the Caribbean, and they are here, I suppose, at the good hosting of the South Louis Community College, one of the participant colleges here in the Eastern Caribbean. And we've got two representatives who are, or in fact, delegates or participants in that conference. And welcome to St. Lucia, and of course, welcome to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean's International. And we're so glad that you can join us here to tell us about the ongoing dialogue which is actually happening at the conference which you're attending. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And perhaps we should be doing some introductions. So I'll allow you to introduce yourselves first and foremost.
So
ladies first.
Thank you. So happy to be here at the conference and happy to be in St. Lucia. I had the most amazing welcome as I stepped through the airport, and I'm going to be back again soon, I have to say that. But in terms of the ACTI conference, I am Annie Aline, the second vice president of ACTI. I'm also the principal of the Barbados Community College.
Wonderful. And give us that acronym, break it down for us a little bit.
It's the Association of Caribbean Tertiary Institutions. And, well, I don't want to jump in and say anything that the president might want to say, but
I'm
President.
Garth
Right.
Anderson, president of ACTI and principal of Church Teachers College in Jamaica.
Wonderful. Welcome and thanks very much for joining us here. And how long has ACTI been in existence?
Well, ACTI was established in November 1990, so we are going 3 decades plus. And it's good to know that our first president was the former vice chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Sir Alistair McIntyre. Mm-hmm. So it has a rich tradition to create a space to give Caribbean leaders in tertiary education an opportunity to engage, to discuss best practices, to treat with professional development, to collaborate on a wide range of academic and administrative issues. But as well, it's an opportunity to reflect on our own leadership and to look at some of these challenges that we face, that many of them are common across the board, and how we find solutions to those problems, and hence CELI.
Yeah. And what's your membership base like across the Caribbean?
We have about 70 member institutions. We usually incorporate all the tertiary institutions in the region. At our Leadership Institute, we have approximately 40 persons participating from a wide range of levels of leadership within our institution: principal, presidents, vice president, deans, etc., registrars, because we believe that for the institutions to be successful, we need the support of all those who have leadership role in the institution to be enhanced, and we discuss and find and chart the way forward.
Yeah, and that is integral to our mission and vision, which is for the advancement of tertiary education in the region. And as a body, we also provide technical support to the members of the organization.
Wonderful. And of course, so it's not just about the heads and principals.
No.
You are, in fact, involving leadership
at all levels.
At all levels.
And there are instances where we have students also
right.
participating in some of our activities, because we need yes, absolutely, because we need to hear from them.
Exactly.
They are the most
The
important,
feedback.
of course,
Yeah.
of course.
And we have like alternate years. Like this year, we're having the leadership seminar. But next year we will have the conference
Yes.
as well. So we have a full conference we did last year. Was really, really, really good. The theme for that was education for social transformation.
Correct.
Right. So we looked at social issues that plague education in the region. And as the president said earlier, he talked about how common some of these issues are that we're currently facing. And collectively, our collective voices at the table, we look at how we can address issues that are common across the Caribbean region as well.
I mean, one of those, I'm sure, in terms of education, you heard quite a bit at that level, the issue of accreditation. Do you look at that in terms of...
Well, definitely. That's
Yeah.
part of what we do, and we try to work closely with CANCATE, which is the regional collaborative institution for quality assurance agencies within the region. But that is, in fact, part of ACTI's mandate,
Yes.
to look at the issue of accreditation and or as well, I think, articulation, which is one of the challenges we have. People doing an associate degree, how do they articulate into universities or in a bachelor's program? So we try to sit and work through that articulation so you can have a seamless kind of transition, because that is important. Resources are not plentiful and readily available, so we have to try to collaborate and see how best we can effectively use what we have.
And of course, as you mentioned, resources, the matter of your stakeholders. I imagine government being one of them, the governments of the region.
That's right.
Do they have a role in this
As
forum?
a central role to play, and
Critical.
as particularly as it relates to funding. And it's no secret that tertiary education in the region is starving for funding. Most of us depend on the tuition paid by our students. Our students, for the most part, are unable to do so. So we have to find other creative ways, whether it's grant writing, find ways of making sure students have access to quality education using the online modalities that exist. But I think in a wider sense, the conversation must go around as a region how important we see tertiary education. And is it that important that governments across the region should start seriously looking at the investment they're making? We can't get more than what we put in. And if there is any skepticism around how important tertiary education is, I think certainly as leaders we have to try to get rid of that kind of bad backward thinking. It is through these institutions we are going to get our innovative thinkers and
That's right.
creators and those who are going to not only form the platform for growth and development, but to enhance that, and as well as to develop those skills to operate on the global stage. I'm not totally convinced that our politicians, who sometimes, quite frankly, don't know much about what is happening in tertiary, making policies around education. We see it as our business as leaders that we now have to invade, if you may, those spaces to participate in those creation of policies and implementation of these policies. If our tertiary sector is not functioning, our region will not function effectively. That's the bottom line.
And if I could add to what the president
Yes,
said,
please. You can move it around.
to what the president said as well. Like in Barbados, our government invests heavily in education, from primary up to the tertiary level, where the mandate is to ensure that education is affordable. However, in addition to what the president said in terms of the investment, one other area is having quality partnerships, whether those partnerships are non-governmental organizations who would come in, who would donate, and it might not necessarily be financial, but it could be in terms of services, mentorship, and so on. And partnerships with other international educational institutions as
Right.
well. Those kinds of quality partnerships are going to be critical for the functioning of the type of education system that we envision, that we want in the Caribbean as well.
It's such an interesting conversation, as you just mentioned, the amount of donations.
Yeah.
Quite recently in New York, Ruth Gottesman, the former professor, as well as a former wife of this billionaire donated $1 billion to this school to ensure that tuition would be free in perpetuity.
Wow.
At this Bronx College Medical School.
Right.
Are we seeing any sense in terms of the private sector, in terms of business getting involved a little bit more in terms of their connection with tertiary level education, as well, of course, in terms of funding it?
Yeah, we have, in terms of regionally, I know we have partnerships. And one of the partnerships the group at my table was talking about was the SAGE project.
Yes.
Right, which you're probably familiar with. On our institutional level, we have had recent investments. And sometimes our donors don't like to have it broadcast, but we just got an investment of 3.1 plus million to refurbish our performing arts hall, which is because there's a focus on culture and cultural industries and so on. And then we've gotten investments for nursing because there's so much emphasis on healthcare workers and so on. So what I've found though is that generally the investors might not necessarily know. We have to do better at marketing,
Right.
and at being visible. So having this forum, and I hear that you're pretty prominent in terms of how widespread your audience is, but having a forum like this is important for us to be here and to share what our vision is, and to say to any potential investors out there that there's a need for investment in tertiary education to ensure that the best and the brightest have access to tertiary education.
I just want to add to that there are pockets of success stories that we can share with private sector supporting, which is important. We need that partnership, public-private partnership, but on a broader scale, it's
Not
wanted.
mainstream.
So as Mr. Lane is saying, that's an area that as leaders in our institutions we have to look at. But there's a clarion call to those who are in the private sector to understand that there has to be this kind of symbiotic relationship between the private sector and these tertiary institutions. This is where you get your guys from, or your ladies from, to do the work that you want to do at a high level, clearly. But if you don't invest in that, and you're not playing a role, not just to give us your money, but to come to talk to us about what are some of the needs you want, or what are some of the skill sets you want, emerging, and you want to have persons ready for. So there has to be this kind of dialogue and engagement with what's happening with our curriculum and what are the needs out there, so there can be some alignment and congruence.
And the quality of the graduates.
Indeed.
Yeah.
As we're talking about resources, and I don't mean to be too controversial, but I mean it's very much out there. Vice Chancellor Hilary Beckles at the University of the West Indies has been pushing very much so on the whole matter of reparations. I mean, we've seen a few opportunities, I think, with a Scottish University of Edinburgh, I think, trying to provide support. Do you think, though, that especially as a region, this should be part of our call, as in terms of your institutions, in fact, making that point that there is a need to rebalance and that whole issue of reparations? Is that
absolutely, it is certainly one of the most equitable, if you ask me.
Right.
So there's no discussion whether or not we need that. How we invest that to impact the mass. Certain is education in social services. Let me put it broadly. In our healthcare sector, in our education, two major areas that we must look at if we really serious about getting what we deserve and ensuring the equitable distribution of what we get. What better areas to look into? Education and healthcare.
But what has been the response from like institutions externally outside the region, in Europe, in North America? Are you seeing a willingness to look at those types of partnerships?
Well, put it this way, there are. In the current construct, it is very expensive to do so. So if for example, you form relationship with a university in London, the cost is, our students, it's really costly to do. So they have good programs. So part of that conversation is how you make it affordable, that I can really access, and it's just not on paper. But I believe there are, but more of that would need to get on board. But beyond going to overseas, our own University of the West Indies, the largest tertiary institution in the region, there has to be a conversation how we forge even greater partnership among ourselves. We have to demonstrate our ability to do so locally before we start looking outside. And so this is really hoping and nudging of the University of the West Indies to reach out to the other colleges and institutes and whatever else to see how we form this conglomerate of sharing what we have, the best practices, and working together for the common good. So instead of competing, we must collaborate. And I don't think much of that is happening currently, so we hope that will happen. Clearly, ACTI is a good vehicle and symbol of what can be achieved when we come together.
Yeah.
And that is what ACTI does.
Yeah.
The matter of financing, I mean, obviously this is a central one. If we want to speak a little bit about it, certainly. Some governments are giving more than others. I'm sure in the mix. I mean, we have, especially in these campus territories like Jamaica, like Trinidad and Tobago, like Barbados. There is that sense that the governments are, in fact, somewhat footing the bill. And you obviously are going to be saying it's not enough still. Where else can it come from, really, at this point?
Yeah, but we have to be creative. These institutions produce the economists, they produce the accountants, they produce the finance officers, and so on. They're the ones that train in that area. And in my opinion, if we produce these stars that are writing papers and coming up with these hypotheses, theories, and ways of operating that should be financially beneficial, then those same individuals in the institution should be leading. And I think in the Caribbean, though, this is my personal feeling, we have to get away from that kind of welfare thinking, where we think that the government is responsible for everything. And we have to own what it is, who we are, and a shift in mindsets. Like when we produce graduates, we need graduates who understand self-sufficiency. And I'm not saying that government shouldn't invest, because they should invest in education, and to the point of reparations as well. A shift in mindset where we understand that is not begging. We're not begging anybody for anything, and you're not going cap in hand and saying, give us this, and so on. But we're asking, as the president said, for equitable distribution. Our parents, grandparents, they invested heavily in the development of these countries, and they weren't rewarded appropriately. All we're saying is, give us the rewards, give us what they should have had, give us what is rightfully, in terms of what was done, the work that was put in. What do you think should be the rewards for that level of work? And in terms of where we are in the region, invest. So the points that I'm going to summarize is that, one, in terms of our own mindsets, understanding that we can be self-sufficient. We have survived so much in the Caribbean. We're resilient, we're strong, we're proud. We have cultures that we can be proud of. But we do want investment and reparations, but in the sense that equitable distribution. That is what we're asking for.
Let's face it. It is education that is going to relieve the mass of the trappings of the plantation. And interestingly, most of our leaders in the region have benefited from their graduates, most of them, University of the West Indies and elsewhere. And so I believe that education would have created a pathway for them. I think they have a moral duty to think seriously as to policies and investment in education for our young people. Because life is a relay. We have to think about those who are coming behind us. Are we creating a platform of success and greatness behind us? What better way to do that other than to invest in the education of our peoples?
You mentioned, of course, that role of ACTI in bringing people together, that conglomeration, but it is certainly a very competitive space out there, the education sector, especially in higher education. Lots of players from the outside, online learning. That space is, becoming very challenging. You also even have institutions based on the outside coming onshore to establish institutions on our islands too. Do they have a part? How do you see those institutions? Are they part of the family? Are they? Do they have this role in their space? How is that felt, especially in comparison to the state institutions?
Really good question.
Well, I put it to you this way: we're operating in a global community, and so what we must do, instead of seeing these institutions as threats, we have to see them as collaborators.
That's right.
And we ought to set within our space what are the rules at play when you come to collaborate. And by collaboration, I don't mean using our institutions as conduits through which your programs flow. What can you get out of this collaboration to build your own faculty, to build the resources within your own institution, while at the same time, possibly remove, taking your students who are doing a 2-year program and they can matriculate and complete a degree. So there can be partnership, because there's no sense in us putting up a resistance that we don't need that. When there is a gap, a void that must be filled. And it can be mutually beneficial to both parties. So there has to be, within individual island space, I know there are rules and regulation governing how these universities come, some of them clearly, because students still have access to online degrees and so on. But we have to understand that within the global space there are all these different avenues. Those things that we have control over, let's take control of them. And there are some we won't be able to control because of how technology has transformed and possibly reformed.
That's right.
How we operate within the space.
And then we recognize as well that these institutions, they bring they bring revenue into the island. So we have to recognize that, and we welcome their contribution to our economic development as well. But in terms of having them here in the Caribbean, collaboration, that is one. But our understanding as well of what it is that we offer, what is uniquely Caribbean, nobody can replicate that. And that is what we market, the Caribbeanness, our culture, our ways of doing things, our storytelling. There's nobody that can tell stories like Caribbean people. Whether it's comedy, whether it's somebody on stage, we have a unique way of speaking. We have programs that will be unique to the Caribbean region, and we leverage that. Other institutions don't have that. So in addition to collaborating, understanding what it is that we bring that is valuable, what it is that we bring to the table, that sets us apart. Nobody can replicate that.
Really, really interesting conversation that we're having right now, and we're having it with the president and vice president of the Association of Caribbean Tertiary Institutions. We're due to have a break, however, for our weather report. So I think we're going to take this in right now, and we'll continue. Well, we'll end our dish of the day, but we'll continue the conversation after.
This has been The Daily Dish.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Books, doors, you'll see. Come down, don't mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Jugosile, and Clark Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
Island Stan's annual Easter clearance sale is here, and boy, do we have some exciting deals for you. Massive savings on tires to be had with discounts of up to 30% off store-wide. Buy all we have in the low stock model and watch your discounts skyrocket with a huge 50% off. Plus, get chip edge tires for as low as $1. Yes, we're clearing out our old stock to bring in the new. And that's not all. The Easter Bunny has added extra savings on toilet tubs, bathroom vanities, tile tools, and so much more. It won't get any better than this. Jump on these excellent deals and visit our Island Style showroom in Cash Street, Rodney Bay, or Viewfort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. That's 8453. Sale ends holiday Saturday. When you think tile, think Island Style.
And welcome back to the Lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. We're discussing the Caribbean tertiary education, and there is an ongoing conference being held right here in St. Lucia. The Association of Caribbean Tertiary Institutions, formed back in Jamaica in November of 1990. And so we're so very pleased to have with us the Vice President and President of this ACTI. And of course, they're coming respectively from the Barbados Community College as well as Church's Teachers College over in Mandeville in Jamaica. And we've certainly been having a conversation, a lot of it about, the issue of resources, how to make it happen, and that conversation, of course, no doubt, with stakeholders, government, private sector, and other players within the market who are coming in to that education space. We heard quite a lot, and we expect, universities to be doing lots of research and development. And how do you balance that between teaching and making that input in terms of R&D and supporting growth and development? Is that part of the conversation?
It is. Let's say that our established universities possibly are doing better at that than the colleges and institutes. Our faculty members, they are crying out. The hours that they have to teach, do practical work and supervision vis-a-vis having to carry out research, which is critical. And all of that is happening, the conundrum we find ourselves, because there's a shortage of resources. We just cannot employ as we would want to, and to find the finances. And let's face it, there are some areas that for whatever reason, possible lack of understanding and appreciation of, the private sector has no interest in investing in. One of them is teacher education. They don't see the immediate results of that. Right. They want to say, I want a technician of whatever, I want an accountant, and that conversation again we have to say why we need to make this investment. But this is a cry that we have in our colleges in particular and institutes of work overload, teaching overload, little time to do research that should really inform practice. But that's a challenge with our faculty accommodation, how many persons we can have on faculty. That's limited because of resources. That's just a reality.
And then the wide variety, the range and types of institutions that we have that make up ACTI. So you have the more academic institutions. Then you have the polytechnics and the technical colleges, where the focus is more on skills and competencies and so on. And an instructor could spend a lot of hours in the classroom working with those students. So there's very little time to do research outside of that. And most of the colleges would have fixed hours for different levels of staff. So if you have clinical staff, like in our nursing program, they have to do 40 hours a week. You are supervising students. Someone who is more academic would do 18 hours a week. And that would be contact hours. And that does not include hours they have to spend tutoring outside of the classroom and so on. So in the colleges and in the technical institutions, that additional time, finding that time is difficult for research. Not impossible. There are some people who just put their heads down, they spend the weekends, nights, late nights, and so on, and they get it done, and they have to be applauded. But that is a challenge. In the more academic institutions where a lecturer may only have to spend 8 contact hours, then there might be a bit more time for doing research and so on.
But again, that discussion about the interfacing between private sector, government, what are their goals, what do they want? Is that happening? I mean, at what level should it be happening? Should it be at the level of the institution, or the national level? I mean, in terms of planning out research development and innovation strategy, at least maybe at the national level.
Well, I'm not too sure. I know CARICOM is doing some work, but whether or not we have an agreement on a plan for education in the region and what that should look like and what that should entail, some work is being done, but I think that's something we need to get out quickly and get some agreement among the peoples of the region to say, this is, for example, what the ideal Caribbean, I know some work has been done,
Some work on that,
to say what that person should
Graduate
look like. But then we have to work towards them, back ways. What needs to be done to create this person?
Graduate.
And that's what we're not prepared to do. So we do a lot of talking and possibly even writing,
Lots of writing.
but no action. There's a lack of action on those who ought to do it.
And we do get feedback from employers as well.
Yes.
And recently the concern has been actually with the quality of the graduates. Some are saying that
They're too well qualified?
No. The recent ones, like some of the feedback is that they come in entitled and they expect high pay and so on and benefits and without putting in the work, etc. So I had one person say to me that they have resorted to getting retired people because they're not going to complain about how to get along with the others and so on. So in our training institutions, these are some of the issues that we have to deal with because they're coming from our institutions. And as a result, we need to have more of those kinds of conversations in terms of what kind of graduates we're producing that can easily go into the workforce and be ready to work on day one.
It also makes me think of the whole issue of reskilling and when you have seniors or persons who are a little older, mature students, and getting them into in those institutions as well. That might be part of that interesting conversation. I know we've got some calls already coming in. Let's see if we could perhaps squeeze one in. Yeah, sure. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today? Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, yes, go ahead, caller. Thanks.
Yes, I think it was President Kennedy who made a statement about asking us not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So how does that particular well-known statement apply to the mindset of graduates that come out of universities now?
Very interesting question, caller. Thanks very much for that one. And perhaps we can also put it on within the context of brain drain as well. I don't know if you want to discuss that. And a lot of Caribbean government leaders may be saying, well, you want me to pay more, but they're not staying in the country. They're all leaving.
Well, as Mr. Lade said, that many of these graduates get into this entitlement attitude, and that's something with our young people and something we have to look at in our training and preparation. How you do the whole person, attitudes and values,
what they call the soft skills.
The soft skills that you take in to the workplace. And it's a challenge, as the caller indicated, that people don't really buy into that anymore. It's about survival. I need this now. That's the age in which we live. Instant gratification. And that's work. I need it now. So we have to look back at our training and see how we work with that. Brain draining, that's a phenomenon that we are treating with. But on a broader spectrum, there's discussion and data to prove that it's not totally draining. There are some, backflow, if
Right.
you may, of
Right.
some finances and so on that come back.
Right.
Again, it's the global community in which the interdependentness of the world in which we live in, that no longer we have borders. We are living a borderless kind of community, and that's something we have to appreciate. So what I'll say, and this is possibly my personal view, is that train more and export. Is it something we should really look at? Do we train and export?
That's
Right.
an interesting.
And I know,
That's
especially in some
interesting
sectors like
In
like
some
nursing,
sectors.
for instance,
Nursing,
where
yes,
there's
yeah.
tremendous
Oh, man.
demand.
Should it be a
Demand.
policy that we
Yeah.
do that?
Right.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, if we get all our people ready to train them, they all can't stay. We at the same time should making sure that we have the necessary things to attract those who ensure our systems can work, but equally, I'm not putting any
But
stumbling
but we need them to give back, though, some kind of return for the money that you invested in them for the years.
Well, it's how,
But
you,
it's
it's how you
years.
evaluate that return.
But is there that sense, though, of grounding? I mean, I know, for instance, that University of the West Indies, there was an attempt at doing foundation courses, so everybody had to do
Yeah.
things like Caribbean civilization.
It's still-
And still, though, many students would tell you that they didn't really...
No, we do it as
Move
a
it.
Pass
course.
the
It
exam,
was just a
yeah.
course, but
It was
Yeah.
as a course.
Yeah.
We did not internalize.
It wasn't internalized.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
You just went
Exactly.
and passed the
Course.
exam.
We
yeah.
passed the exam.
Right,
yeah.
it was just
You know?
another exam.
Well, that's the reality. And myself did it too. You need to get
Me
it out
too.
of the way.
Yeah.
It's a requirement, but did we really internalize that and look at the implications of it? And did it make us better, a committed person to the space we are in? But we are all looking across the shores. That's how it is. And that is why those of us who remain should, sometimes we feel undervalued. The system, they are committed Jamaicans, Caribbean people, Barbadian people, you name it, who decide that, listen, I'm not leaving. I'm staying here, going
I'm
through the
That's right.
good days and the bad days. But sometimes it is daunting.
Yeah.
It's daunting,
But it's necessary.
but it is necessary.
And not only that, I keep saying as well that this generation, our generation, if we're going to be complaining about young people or whatever, we're the ones that produce them. You understand? So it is finding a better way to do education, and that is what ACTI is all about: quality, relevance, effectiveness. That is part of our mandate, figuring out how we do that at the tertiary level, and definitely how we produce graduates who understand about giving, who understand our culture, that is endemic to the Caribbean. That is what our parents and grandparents did. Those kind of traditional cultural values, we don't want to lose them. And if we're not doing a good job and passing that on, we have to self-reflect and do better.
And it's interesting that you're making that point, because quite often people associate with academic institutions, when you get to that level, there's a certain level of coldness. You come to a lecture, it's delivered, you go on your way, and there's not perhaps that much interaction that you may get, let's say, from a more teaching, more intimate, hand-holding, stewarding
I
that
think
is perhaps sometimes lacking
That
at the
has
tertiary
changed
level.
at a lot of these colleges, though. It
Within
might
our
still be,
colleges,
but in
that's
colleges, not the norm.
Certainly,
I
and I think elements of the university as well. There are some parts of it where it's still a lecture.
Yeah.
We're going, many of our colleges and institutes and so on, we actually teaching.
Yeah.
We're actually teaching.
Walking
We're actually
around the
having
classroom,
engagement
yeah,
and have discussions with our students.
right.
It's a more intimate relationship that we have in our college. They're smaller spaces. Some of us have 1,000 students, some less. So it's easier to interact and treat with the total development. This idea of commitment to self and country and region, it takes some time to work on, because our young people are not so committed. And as Ms. Lane said, who creating them?
Yeah.
There's no sense of responsibility when our youngsters, many of them who come to us are 17, 18, 19, youngsters, 16. They're coming to us, and they're coming to us with that mindset. Where did it come from? Nobody having chores to do anymore.
That's right.
Nobody interacting in the home anymore. We are all insular individual on our devices and so on, and that's how insular and myopic are the views.
Right.
So it's when we talk about education, it's far beyond content matters and subject matters. It's about interpersonal relationship and attitudes and values. And then we could have a big discussion whose values and whose attitude. But that's
right.
for
That's another discussion.
No doubt that sounds like a very good pitch for teaching institutions.
Absolutely,
and how they can in fact mold.
Well, we do a lot of that,
Right.
and even within our teacher education space, that's a challenge. Because those students are coming from the communities that have diverse thinking and views about values and attitude, and those traditional and daring and enduring attitudes and values and things that we hold dear, they don't have that kind of commitment to them. It is whatever I want, and whatever I want to do, I must be free
to do it.
to do it.
And
No rules and regulation.
that's right. And we were discussing that actually this morning, part of the impact of social media on tertiary education, which is something that we're all dealing with, where you can have anybody anywhere with a cell phone take a photo, post it, make a comment, record a video, put that on social media, and it changes the narrative. And you can get something going viral. And you'd know, you're in media, you'd know about the cancel culture as well. All of those, they're not localized to the community or certain sets of people. They impact higher education institutions as well. So part of the narrative now is dealing with those kinds of impacts. How they impact students, how they impact staff, how they impact the tertiary education environment as well. Yeah.
And you raise this issue, and of course this bombardment of the space for learning is no longer in the classroom or even at the home. It's in the media that is everywhere.
That's right.
Media literacy, digital literacy, is that something that it needs to come on board? And in terms of
Again, that can be subjective. What's media literacy? What digital literacy? Because our students, maybe there is some good about it. We talk about critical thinking. Are prepared to chart their own way on some issues. And everybody have rights now. It's my right for free speech.
That's right.
And to do what I want to do. And I'm sure the wider public says, yes, and within an academic space at the tertiary level, that should be allowed. But any society you have, any environment where you don't have borders
That's right.
on some issues, you could be flooded anytime.
Yeah. And if they use it to denigrate each other as well, where you have this cyberbullying, those are issues that we have to have policies in place. And in terms of digital literacy, understanding the power of social media and how to use it to build up rather than tear down, how to use it to transform positively rather than denigrate. I think those are issues, and those are the kinds of values that we probably want to inculcate into our graduates as well.
Indeed. And of course, we do have to touch on it, and I'm sure it's perhaps come up in your conversations as well. The issue of artificial intelligence, AI,
Yes.
and what that is doing in the classroom space, in the learning space. I mean, plagiarism was obviously has always been an issue, but it's on steroids now. It's how are you keeping up? Are you adapting? Are you
in fact, we
Are you behind the
part
curve?
of I think in a sense we are behind coming up around the curve. Many institutions are working on policies as to how you, in a sense, embrace but ethically help our students to use, because it's here. Right? Let's face it, there's no way we can say you can't use, they will use. So we have to find a middle ground to say how we can, in an ethical way, engage them to say this is what is accepted, this is what not accepted. And of course, some people are concerned about what it does for critical thinking. You don't have to do much anymore to think about
Is it
But
shifting the nature of assessment though?
Absolutely.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
part
Yes.
of what we're looking
Yes.
at.
You know, the idea that you just have to. I mean, right now all children are so much smarter than
Oh, yeah.
how we used to
Oh,
be
yeah.
in the past because
Way,
everything
way.
is
Yes.
at their
That was
accessible.
actually a presentation,
Vision that
part
we
of the
had,
workshop, looking at assessment, AIs, what you
That's
can
right.
do, what you can't do, what are some of the features and possibilities out there, both from a faculty perspective and what's from a student's perspective.
Okay.
But all of that would have to be bounded within a policy framework.
Yeah.
As to how we use both for gathering information as well as assessment. So, of course, it's going to seriously impact and transform not only how we teach, but how we assess.
Yeah.
But are you seeing it right now? I mean, right now in terms of the current reality on the
Absolutely.
ground, it's
That's
impacting.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely,
Oh, yes.
absolutely.
And
People
that
are
is
on
why-
these chat
Oh,
GPTs
man.
and they're all
Yes. Everybody.
they are submitting
Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
papers.
Everybody,
Okay.
everybody.
Yeah. And
And
that's
s-
why the role
yeah.
of ATI is critical.
And that is why, because we were able to hear from different institutions
Right.
what they are
Exactly.
doing, what
Right.
are their experiences. We can learn from you. You can learn from another institution. So the space, ACTI as a space provides for that sharing of best practices. So
Yeah.
very, very, very relevant. And I can say, I wouldn't term it a challenge, it's an opportunity
Yeah.
for us to take a second look at what we do in our institution around teaching and learning.
You're almost 35 years in ACTI in terms of your collaboration. Where do you see yourself going in the next 10 years or so?
Well,
In the tertiary education space in the Caribbean.
Well, we hope that we will seriously, as ACTI as an institution, will seriously help to treat with some of these challenges that we have. We have to see greater collaboration and a space to discuss our issues, not just among ourselves, but those policymakers who make the policies at CARICOM, to have a conversation around that larger table, looking at education and particularly tertiary education, to get certainly more of our institutions, private and otherwise, within the region to become more actively engaged in the conversation that ACTI allows for.
Does such a forum exist, or is this what you're doing now?
This
now?
is it. This is it.
So
Yeah.
ministers of education, education
Yeah.
officers,
We're represented
are they?
on CARICOM.
We are represented in
CARICOM,
CARICOM and so
Okay.
on. So I'm just
campus councils.
a
and
number of the
number
campus
of-
councils in our universities, we have representation to
Yeah.
give us a voice there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think we have
We
to
want to expand.
amplify
That's right.
the voice that we have in these spaces to ensure that we become the real advocate for tertiary education, the safeguarding and promoting the
Yeah.
import of tertiary education in the region. But we are strong and we expect to be stronger and more
That's right.
vibrant. And that is why the Leadership Institute is so important, because we'll have
The
to
next
make way
generation.
for the next generation. So we need to get them attuned to who we are, what we do, and how important is the work that we do in ACTI is for the entire region and possibly the world. Because we Caribbean people are just about
Everywhere.
everywhere.
That's right. And
Apparently so.
part of that
And-
vision as well is even though we grapple with the issues that we have now, we're forward thinking. Where is the world going to be in the next 50 years? What are going to be the issues? And we set the platform for dealing with those issues. So the role of ATI is to be visionary and almost prophetic in understanding what is coming next and preparing our membership for what is next.
And just to be clear again, because I think when we speak about the Caribbean in this context, we speak about English-speaking Caribbean countries.
English-speaking Caribbean.
Okay, so
Yes.
as of now, in terms of potential, Suriname, Haiti,
Well,
not
well,
quite. Yeah, is that
Not quite there doesn't mean it won't happen.
Okay.
Very
Okay.
well will happen, because guess what? The same issues we have,
They are.
they're having.
Yeah.
And small island states, we better pool together. I don't know if we have an option. We better come together to capitalize on the little we have to make much of it.
Wonderful indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much for sharing
Has
with
been a
us
pleasure.
Yeah,
the
has been.
findings of what is being discussed at the conference happening right here in St. Lucia, the Association of Caribbean Tertiary Institutions, formed back in 1990. We've just been speaking with the president and vice president of ACTI as they continue. St. Lucia, for another day, I think you have another day of meetings.
Yes. Yes.
And so we wish you the very best.
Thank
Hope
you.
it goes.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much for
much.
having
Thanks
us,
for the
and all the
opportunity.
best to your
Thank
your viewers and listeners.
Hope they,
Has
I'm
been a
sure they
pleasure.
had a good one enjoying this one. And yes, so that's all we've got for today. We'll be back again tomorrow, God willing, for another program of The Lunchroom. I'm your host, Alex George Jr., saying goodbye.